My name is Quinn Whitmore, 31 years old. For 18 months, my life revolved around the small brick house at the edge of Meadow Creek Road, the one that always smelled faintly of lavender and lemon oil. Every Tuesday and Friday, I'd make the 43-minute drive after work, groceries in the back seat, prescriptions rattling in a paper bag. Some weeks, I arrived so tired I had to sit in the car with the engine running, just to collect myself before walking in. But the moment I opened that creaky front door and heard Grandma's soft, "You're here," it was like my exhaustion melted off my shoulders. Caleb lived 12 minutes away. Natasha, only 8. Neither came unless they needed something, usually a little help with rent or a bridge loan for Natasha's latest business idea. Grandma never said a word against them, but sometimes when I was scrubbing the bathroom or organizing her pills, I caught her eyes following me with quiet worry. "You're doing too much, my girl," she'd whisper, patting my hand. "Don't let love turn into martyrdom." I'd laugh it off. "You're the only person who calls caregiving love, Grandma." She smiled, that knowing, half-teasing look she'd had my entire life. "Then you've never watched someone do it wrong." Her health had been slipping for a while, small things at first. A dropped spoon, a forgotten name, then the fall. One late winter night, she slipped in the bathroom and broke her hip. I took family leave from work and moved into her house for 3 weeks, sleeping on the lumpy couch that smelled faintly of mothballs and chamomile tea. The house was old, the floors uneven, but she refused to move. "This is where your grandfather carried me over the threshold," she said. "I'm not leaving it behind now." At 2 a.m., I'd hear her call softly for help, and I'd shuffle in, half asleep, guiding her to the bathroom, steadying her trembling hands. She'd apologize every single time. "I'm sorry, honey. You should be home in your own bed." "I am home," I'd say. During those weeks, Caleb called twice. Natasha sent a get well card that arrived without a handwritten message, just her name printed from a fancy stationery app. "Where is everyone?" Grandma asked once, her voice small under the thin hospital blanket. "They're busy," I lied, fluffing her pillows. She squeezed my fingers. "You're a good girl, Quinn. Don't think I don't notice." I told myself it was enough, that love didn't need witnesses. But late at night, when the house was quiet except for the ticking clock and her shallow breathing, I caught myself wishing someone else would show up, just once. When she recovered, life found a rhythm again. She shuffled around the kitchen with her cane, humming old hymns under her breath, while I labeled her medication bottles and replaced the batteries in the smoke alarms. Sometimes I'd come over and find her writing in a small floral notebook, the kind she'd use for recipes and grocery lists. "What's that?" I asked once. "Just memories," she said, closing it quickly. "It helps me keep the years in order." I didn't think much of it at the time. As the months rolled by, my visits became the anchor of her week. She'd sit by the window waiting, wrapped in her wool shawl, the afternoon light catching the silver in her hair. "You're all I have left, who still remembers me young," she told me one day. Her tone was soft, but I caught the edge of something else beneath it. A warning, maybe. Then spring came and everything changed. It started with fatigue. She'd fall asleep mid-conversation, her tea cooling beside her untouched. The doctor ordered tests. I waited with her in that sterile, humming exam room, pretending not to see her trembling. When the oncologist finally said the word, cancer, she just nodded, almost peacefully. I, on the other hand, felt my stomach twist into knots. After that, my siblings suddenly became very interested in Grandma's condition. Not her comfort, not her pain, her condition. They called every other day, demanding updates, questioning the oncologist's credentials, insisting on second opinions from specialists in Dallas or Denver. "We should all make decisions together," Natasha said in her best reasonable voice. "We're family." Family, the word made me want to laugh. But I didn't. I just kept driving those 43 minutes. Filling her fridge with soups and smoothies she could stomach, changing her sheets, rubbing lotion into her paper-thin skin. Caleb promised he'd visit soon. Natasha said she'd send flowers. Neither promise landed in reality. One evening, after a particularly hard day of chemo, I helped Grandma into bed and sat beside her, holding her hand as she drifted between wakefulness and sleep. "Quinn," she murmured, "don't hate them. They're blind to what matters. People like that, they learn too late." I wanted to believe her, I really did. But when I checked my phone later that night, there were 3 new missed calls: Caleb, Natasha, and Natasha again. The voicemail tone was sharp, accusatory. "Why didn't you loop us in on her treatment plan? You don't make those decisions alone." I deleted them without listening to the end. Still, Grandma's calm never wavered. "They'll come around," she said one afternoon as I brushed her hair. "And if they don't, the world has its ways of balancing the scales." Her words stayed with me, even when I didn't fully understand them. Sometimes I'd catch her at the dining table, writing again in that same floral notebook. She'd pause, reread a line, then nod slightly to herself before tucking it away. Once, I asked what she was working on. She smiled. "Just setting a few things in order. You know me, I like things tidy." I didn't know then that those pages would change everything. By midsummer, her condition worsened. The doctors talked in hushed tones outside the room, and I began to sense what they couldn't say aloud. One night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching fireflies drift above the grass. My hands smelled faintly of antiseptic. Inside, Grandma slept under her favorite quilt. I remember whispering to the dark, "Please let her stay a little longer." The next morning, she was weaker, but smiling. "Don't be afraid of endings, Quinn," she said quietly. "They're just the beginning of truth." When I looked into her eyes that day, I realized she wasn't afraid. She was preparing for something. I just didn't know what. The phone calls from Caleb and Natasha increased, but I stopped answering altogether. They began leaving messages, some filled with concern, others laced with accusation. "We're just trying to help," Caleb said. "You can't control everything." But I wasn't controlling anything. I was holding everything together. And yet, deep down, I could feel it, a storm gathering. Something was coming that would rip open every unspoken truth in this family. When Grandma's oncologist called 2 weeks later with the test results, his tone told me everything before his words did. I sank into the kitchen chair, the world spinning faintly around me. Grandma's voice echoed in my head, calm and steady. "Don't be afraid of endings." I looked at the floral notebook lying on her nightstand and felt a chill run down my spine. Whatever she'd been tidying, I was about to find out. The final month began with a sound I still hear sometimes when the house is too quiet, the soft wheeze of the oxygen concentrator and Grandma humming under her breath to keep me from noticing. She said the humming soothed her. Really, it was for me. The machine's whir turned our days into a measured rhythm. Inhale, exhale, beep. I learned the choreography of care down to muscle memory. Flush the port, check the line, half pill at noon, full pill at 6, take the temperature twice if she felt chilled, always carry the little plastic basin for the nausea that could rise without warning. I was less a person than a hinge, opening and closing every hour on time. Caleb called more often, his voice wrapped in moral certainty. "We need to discuss a specialist in Dallas," he said one Monday, as if a plane ticket and a new lab coat could outrun time. "She's exhausted," I said. "Changing hospitals would break her." "Or save her," he snapped, then added more softly, "Don't make this decision alone." I looked at the pill organizer in my hand, Tuesday's row already half empty. I'm not making decisions alone, I'm carrying them. Natasha's concern was a filtered thing. She posted a photograph of her hand wrapped around Grandma's on a day she visited for 13 minutes between bar class and brunch. The caption read, "Grateful for time with my favorite girl." I watched her retake the shot 3 times for lighting, then leave the flowers on the porch because the vase clashed with the feed. Later that night, she texted me a screenshot of a direct message from a follower, "You're such an angel," and wrote, "See? People care." I typed and deleted 5 replies. In the end, I sent nothing. Grandma noticed the strain, but refused to weaponize it. "Be gentle with them," she said, when I recounted Caleb's newest demands. "They're afraid." "Of what?" I asked, smoothing lotion into her hands. "Of love that costs, of work that doesn't reward the way they expect." She turned her palm up, tracing the faint map of her lifelines with a fingertip. "Some people want love to be a receipt. They do not know how to stay when the cash register's closed." Chemo days carved the calendar into bleak islands. Dawn drives on empty roads, the clinic already awake, nurses walking briskly beneath fluorescents. I learned the way her shoulders dropped when the drip began, the way her eyes found mine like a tether. Tell me something good, she'd say. I started collecting small goodness. The girl at the coffee cart who added extra cinnamon, a family of fox kits by the creek, the neighbor boy who left a paper crane on our mailbox. She loved the ordinary bravery of those things. Keep a list, she urged, tapping that floral notebook. One day, when your life feels like a hallway, you'll need a window. Sometimes, when she slept, I cleaned to keep from crying, the kind of deep scrubbing that makes a room admit it has edges. In the hallway closet, I found a manila envelope labeled in her neat hand. Caleb. Insurance. Another labeled Natasha. Phone. I froze, hand still on the shelf, feeling a thread pull tight through the weeks. I put them back untouched, the cardboard rasping softly. When I returned to the living room, the notebook was on her lap. She slid a ribbon between the pages and looked up. Did you find what you were looking for? I wasn't looking, I said. I know, she replied, and smiled as if that mattered most. The pain came in waves that stole language. There were hours I sat on the edge of the bed, repeating the nurse's instructions back to myself like a spell. Slow breaths, Ms. Whitmore. Quinn. Lower the lights. Yes, that's it. I hated the helplessness of the body failing, and loved her all the more fiercely inside it. Later she woke to find me watching the pulse in her throat. My girl, she murmured, don't hover at the door of death. Come sit in the kitchen with me while I'm still here. So I made tea, and she told me stories she'd told 100 times, and I let them wash over me as if they were brand new. The girl she was on the prairie farm, the boy who stuttered through asking her to the harvest dance, the day she decided she would never be the kind of woman who kept quiet about the truth. I didn't always manage it, she admitted, eyes glinting with the mischief of a life fully lived. But mostly I did. A week later, Caleb finally visited. He stood in the doorway with a bouquet that still wore its grocery sticker, surveying the room like an auditor. He kissed Grandma's forehead, then followed me to the kitchen under the pretense of rinsing a vase. You've had her sign anything recently? He asked, voice low. A get-well card, I said evenly. He set the vase down hard enough to chip it. You know what I mean. I stared at the small white fracture line crawling the glass. She's in the living room, if you want to ask her yourself. He didn't. He sat beside her and said all the right sentences in the wrong order. How are you feeling? We should talk about the house. I read about an attorney who... When he left, he squeezed my arm with a grip that wasn't affection. Transparency, Quinn, he said, like a warning. This isn't just your decision. I walked him to the porch without replying. The hydrangeas bowed in the heat. The sky was high and cruelly blue. That night, Grandma asked me to bring the tin from the pantry, the old cookie tin with the dented lid. Inside lay a stack of receipts, a flash drive, and a folded sheet of paper with my name on it. Not yet, she said when I reached for the paper. When the time asks for it. She slid the tin back, then touched my cheek. You'll know. The hospice nurse started coming twice a week, then daily. She moved through the house with quiet competence and kind eyes, whispering care plans, adjusting oxygen, laying cool cloths on fevered skin. You're doing beautifully, she told me after a night that felt like drowning and rescue. You're the reason she's at peace. Peace felt like a foreign word. I slept in snatches, waking to every shift in her breathing, every drift of silence. I stopped wearing makeup. Time stopped wearing a face. The last Sunday was deceptively gentle. Sun through lace curtains, birds bickering with cheerful malice in the maple. Grandma dozed and woke, asked for a bite of toast, then only water, then only the coolness of the spoon against her lips. I read her poems with simple words and long breaths. In the afternoon, she asked for the window to be opened. I want the world to feel invited, she teased. Late evening, when the room held that blue that doesn't belong to any clock, she squeezed my hand. Do you forgive them? I'm trying, I said, because I wouldn't lie to her, not now. Trying is a kind of yes, she whispered. It lets God do the rest. She slipped into unconsciousness just after midnight. I kept talking anyway, my voice a bridge across a river I couldn't see. I told her the list of small good things, the fox kits, the cinnamon, the paper crane, until language dissolved into breath. Near dawn, her chest rose and fell, then simply didn't. The room did not change, and yet everything did. I kissed her forehead. It was astonishing how quickly the body returned to being only a room. I called the hospice nurse. I sat on the edge of the bed and counted my own breaths. Then I called Caleb and Natasha. They arrived within an hour, swifter than they had moved in months. The living room became a tribunal. Caleb paced, practicing indignation on the oak floor. She should have gone to Dallas. You talked her out of it. Natasha stood by the mantel, eyes skimming the antique clock like a hawk. We weren't consulted. You isolated her. I was too tired to be strategic. I held her hand while she vomited, I said. You refreshed your feeds. Natasha flushed. Caleb jabbed a finger toward the hallway. We'll be speaking to an attorney. Good, I replied, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. He's already in your contacts. I didn't know if that was true, but I had seen enough manila envelopes to understand that truth had been busy without me. The funeral was small and honest. Blue hydrangeas, simple hymns, the smell of lemon oil from the pew backs. People who had loved her in the unobtrusive ways that matter came and squeezed my hands. Neighbors who remembered pies left on porches after surgeries, nurses who remembered how she learned their names. Caleb and Natasha kept close to each other and closer to the lawyer they'd hired just in case, whispering the way people whisper when they want to be overheard. At the wake, accusation slipped its leash. You turned her against us, Caleb said flatly beside the food table, eyes on the silver. Natasha's voice was pitched for public injury. Classic elder abuse. Half the room went still. I stared at the deviled eggs and felt my grief harden into something like clarity. She kept her own counsel, I said, even from me. Convenient, Caleb muttered. Documented, I answered, before I remembered I hadn't meant to say that out loud. After the last casserole was wrapped in foil and the last polite story retired, the phone rang. Attorney Jameson's assistant, voice cool and precise. The reading of Mrs. Whitmore's will is scheduled for Tuesday at 10 a.m. Mr. and Miss Whitmore have been notified. The line clicked off, leaving a silence so clean it felt surgical. I stood in Grandma's kitchen and let the old clock count out 10 seconds, then 20. On the counter sat the floral notebook, closed, a ribbon marking a place I was not yet allowed to go. The cookie tin waited on the pantry shelf like a sealed weather report. Somewhere in the house, the oxygen machine clicked, then finally stilled. The storm that had brooded for months lifted its head. I set my palms on the cool laminate and bowed my own head, not in defeat, not even in prayer, just in recognition. Endings, beginnings. Truth knocking on the door, it had built itself. Tuesday was coming, and with it, whatever Grandma had tidied into order. Tuesday arrived gray and wet, the kind of morning where the clouds sagged low enough to touch. I drove through mist thick as breath, the windshield wipers beating time like a nervous heart. Grandma's lawyer, Mr. Jameson, had his office downtown, a squat brick building wedged between a florist and a tax service. The brass nameplate on the door gleamed, polished for the occasion, and I caught my reflection in it, hair pulled back, eyes rimmed red, the ghost of a granddaughter waiting to become an heir. Inside, the air smelled like paper and old wood. The receptionist directed me to a paneled conference room with heavy curtains and a single ticking clock. Caleb and Natasha were already there. He wore his best navy suit, the one from his wedding. She was draped in black silk, face perfectly made up, but hands shaking when she thought no one was watching. Beside her sat a young man in an ill-fitting blazer, her lawyer, I guessed. No one spoke when I entered. Caleb offered a tight nod, more gesture than greeting. Natasha stared at her phone as if her screen might rescue her. The rain against the windows filled the silence until Mr. Jameson entered, gray-haired, polite, his expression neutral, the way only a lawyer's can be. "Thank you all for coming," he said, taking his seat. "We're here to execute the last will and testament of Mrs. Dorothy May Whitmore." He opened a thick folder bound with twine. "Before I begin, I'll remind everyone this document was written in her own hand, dated March 15th of this year, witnessed by 2 independent parties, and notarized. Mrs. Whitmore also left medical certifications confirming her mental competence. I felt Caleb's eyes flick toward me, sharp as a knife point. Mr. Jameson cleared his throat. To my granddaughter Quinn, who has shown me more love and devotion than I ever deserved, I leave my home and all its contents, my savings accounts, investment portfolio, and the family farm in Nebraska. The words hit like a quiet thunderclap. Caleb's jaw locked. Natasha made a strangled sound, half laugh, half disbelief. The young lawyer beside her scribbled furiously. There's more, Mr. Jameson said calmly, turning the page. To my remaining grandchildren, Caleb and Natasha, who have shown me exactly who they are over these past years, I leave the following. The air in the room went still. To Caleb, he read, I leave you my medical bills, all $47,000 of them, the ones you never asked about while demanding updates on my assets. You'll find them neatly organized in the manila folder marked Caleb's Inheritance in my kitchen drawer. Caleb made a choking noise, half rising from his chair. His lawyer put a hand on his arm. Sit down, the man muttered. Mr. Jameson continued as if reading a weather report. To Natasha, I leave my collection of every voicemail, text message, and social media post where you mentioned my money, my house, or my belongings. There are 47 audio files and 83 screenshots. You spoke about my death as if you were planning a shopping spree. Natasha's face drained of color. That's absurd, she said, turning toward me. You hacked my phone. No, Mr. Jameson said firmly. Mrs. Whitmore asked a friend to help her compile them. The evidence is cataloged and time-stamped. The lawyer paused, allowing the silence to stretch until even the rain seemed to stop. Furthermore, he said, Mrs. Whitmore specified that she was of sound mind when this will was written. She was examined by Dr. Patricia Vance on March 10th and declared fully competent. That evaluation was recorded and witnessed. He set down the page and looked directly at my siblings. She also kept detailed journals of her interactions with each of you for the past 2 years. Every missed visit, every phone call asking about money, every excuse for not helping with her care. Those journals are part of the estate record. My throat tightened. I remembered the floral notebook, the pages she'd hidden so carefully. There is one final section, Mr. Jameson said, pulling a sealed envelope from the folder. My name was written on it in Grandma's familiar looping hand. She asked that this be read aloud in the presence of all parties. He passed it to me. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. The paper smelled faintly of lemon oil and old perfume. My darling Quinn, I read aloud. If you're holding this, then my other grandchildren are probably furious about what I left them. Good. They deserve to be angry at themselves. Caleb flinched. Natasha's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, though not of grief. For 2 years, I watched them circle like vultures while you gave me your time, your energy, your patience. When I was diagnosed with cancer, Caleb asked if I'd updated my will before asking how I was feeling. When I broke my hip, Natasha's first text was whether I'd need to sell the house. But you, my sweet girl, never asked for anything. You just showed up. My voice wavered. You held my hand through chemo. You slept on that dreadful couch. You read me poetry and listened to stories you'd heard 100 times. You were my comfort when everyone else was counting down the days. I am leaving you everything, not because you manipulated me, but because you loved me. Real love doesn't have an agenda. The room swam in silence. I lowered the letter, unable to speak. Mr. Jameson folded his hands. There's one more provision, he said softly. Mrs. Whitmore established a $50,000 trust fund for the care of her gravesite and an annual scholarship in her name for nursing students. Caleb and Natasha are not eligible to be trustees or beneficiaries. Caleb shot to his feet. This is insane. She was clearly coerced. Mr. Jameson lifted another folder. Mrs. Whitmore anticipated that accusation. She underwent evaluations by 3 different doctors and 2 sessions with a social worker to confirm she wasn't under duress. She also recorded video statements explaining her reasoning. The recordings are stored in 3 separate bank safe deposit boxes. He slid a document toward Caleb's lawyer, who skimmed it and blanched. Natasha's voice cracked. I want to contest this. There has to be a way. You're welcome to try, said Mr. Jameson, but I should warn you, Mrs. Whitmore's documentation is exhaustive. She even kept receipts for Quinn's gas money and grocery bills, every appointment she attended, and recordings of phone calls where you both discussed her finances. Caleb's jaw dropped. That's illegal. You can't record without consent. In this state, the lawyer replied smoothly, only one party's consent is required. Mrs. Whitmore consented. For the first time, I saw fear in my brother's eyes. She also included a clause, Mr. Jameson went on, that if anyone contests this will frivolously, they forfeit even what little she left them. Those assets will transfer to Quinn. The words landed like the final nail in a coffin. Natasha pushed her chair back abruptly, knocking it over. That manipulative old— "I'd stop right there," Mr. Jameson interrupted. "Mrs. Whitmore left specific instructions for any party who spoke ill of her after her passing. You'd lose your right to visit her property or grave." Natasha froze mid-sentence. The rain drummed on. Caleb sat heavily, rubbing his temples. I gathered the documents with shaking hands. My voice, when it came, surprised me with its calm. "I think we're done here." As I turned toward the door, Caleb grabbed my wrist. "You can't just take everything," he hissed. "We're family." I met his eyes. "No," I said quietly. "Family shows up. Family cares. Family doesn't wait for death to start remembering someone's name." He let go. Natasha's lips trembled, words caught between anger and shame. "She was our grandmother, too." "Really?" I asked. "When's the last time you asked what medicine she was on, or how scared she was? All you ever asked about was her bank balance." No one answered. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled sharp, almost clean. I paused at the doorway and turned back one last time. "By the way," I said, my voice steady now, "you might want to check those envelopes she left for you. You'll find exactly what you gave her." Their faces blurred behind me as I stepped into the hall. For the first time in months, the weight on my chest lifted, not because I'd won, but because the truth had finally spoken for itself. Still, as I walked out into the drizzle, one thought kept circling. Grandma hadn't just written a will. She'd written a lesson. And somehow, it still wasn't finished. The weeks after the will reading felt like a hangover that refused to end. Grief, relief, guilt— they all tangled together until I couldn't tell where one stopped and the other began. The house was quiet again, but not peaceful. It breathed differently now, as if aware it had changed owners, but not allegiance. Her lavender perfume still lingered in the curtains. I left it there. I buried myself in tasks, calling the utilities, organizing paperwork, donating what Grandma had asked to be given away. The lawyer had made the estate transfer seamless, but my conscience wasn't so easily notarized. Every time I signed my name, I heard her voice. "You earned this through love, not manipulation." And yet part of me still wondered if love could ever be clean when it left others ruined. The phone started ringing again within a week. Caleb's number first. I let it go to voicemail. His tone was formal, businesslike. "We're contesting the will. You should know." Then Natasha's text followed. "Hope you're happy. You stole everything." By the end of the month, the lawsuit arrived, a stack of papers thick enough to make the mailbox groan. Their lawyers claimed undue influence, emotional manipulation, exploitation of an elder. Reading it felt like being punched in the chest. I'd devoted 18 months of my life to love, and they'd found a way to weaponize it. Mr. Jameson handled most of it. He was methodical, unflappable. "They won't get far," he assured me. "Your grandmother's documentation is bulletproof." Still, every court date chipped something away inside me. Sitting there, hearing my own name framed as a predator's, it burned. The evidence unfolded like a theater of truth. The floral notebook became Exhibit A. Each entry was read aloud, dates, times, observations, in Grandma's looping script. March 4th. Quinn brought soup again. Caleb called about investments. April 22nd. Natasha posted a photo of tulips she didn't bring me. June 3rd. Quinn held my hand through the night. I felt safe. When the judge finally spoke, his tone carried a strange tenderness. "This is the most thorough personal record I've ever reviewed. The will stands as written." 3 months of legal war collapsed into silence. Outside the courthouse, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in a season. That night, I found the courage to open the letter Grandma had left sealed for "After the Noise." It was tucked inside her nightstand under a lavender sachet. Her handwriting flowed steady and elegant. "My dearest Quinn, if you're reading this, then the others have already shown their colors. Do not hate them for it. People can only reach as far as their own hearts allow. But promise me this: don't let victory become another kind of cage. Take what I've given you and turn it towards something good. Give it breath again." Below the letter was a small note in a different ink. "Closet behind Christmas decorations. Box marked for Quinn's future." I found it exactly where she said. Inside was a bundle of heirlooms, a gold locket engraved with initials I didn't recognize, a folded letter from her mother, and a coffee tin filled with cash, a small fortune in wrinkled 20s. For your first vacation when this is over, she'd written on a sticky note. Somewhere warm where you can heal. I pressed the locket to my chest and cried until I couldn't breathe. Not out of sadness, out of the strange relief of being seen completely. 2 weeks later, Natasha launched her counterattack, not in court, but online. She posted a long thread on social media, how my sister stole my inheritance. Within hours, it had thousands of likes. She uploaded carefully cropped photos of Grandma's will, omitting the parts that made her look guilty, and paired them with photos of herself crying by a headstone she hadn't visited since the funeral. For a moment, sympathy rolled her way. But the internet has a cruel memory. Someone found the old posts she'd written about shopping with Grandma's inheritance money. Screenshots spread like wildfire. By day 3, the comments turned venomous. By day 5, her employer, a family law firm, issued a statement distancing itself from her behavior. By day 7, she deleted everything. Caleb stayed quieter. His lawsuit had drained his savings, and whispers reached me that he'd mortgaged his house to pay legal fees. Part of me wanted to gloat. A bigger part wanted to forget the whole thing. That's when I decided to honor Grandma's wish, to give it breath again. I met with the hospice administrator who had cared for her. Together we established the Dorothy Whitmore Compassion Fund, 3 annual scholarships for nursing students, and a grant for family caregivers in crisis. It felt right. It felt like her. Then, on an otherwise ordinary afternoon, Caleb showed up at the gate. He looked nothing like the man I'd grown up with. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes hollow. He didn't open the gate, just stood there gripping the iron like it might hold him up. "Can we talk?" he asked. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door. Another part, the one that still remembered his laughter as a kid, couldn't quite do it. I nodded toward the porch. He sat on the steps, head bowed. "I lost everything," he said simply. "The house, the business, even Natasha won't talk to me." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it more than I expected. He looked up, desperation softening into humility. "I need help, Quinn, just a loan, enough to start again." For a heartbeat, I almost said yes. The human part of me, the tired caregiver who still believed in family, rose to the surface. But then I saw his old arrogance flicker behind his eyes, the expectation that I would always fix what he broke. "You want help," I said quietly, "but what you really want is absolution." His shoulders tensed. "You can afford it. You have everything." "I have peace," I said. "That's not for sale." He blinked hard, his voice breaking. "She would have wanted you to help family." I stood up. "She did help family. She left you the truth. You just never wanted it." He stared at me for a long time, then nodded slowly. "Guess I deserve that." When he left, he didn't look back. That night, I sat on the porch watching the sky turn indigo, the garden glowing faintly with fireflies. I opened Grandma's letter again, tracing her words. "Don't let victory become another kind of cage." For the first time, I understood. The inheritance wasn't about money, it was about transformation. She'd built a mirror, and all of us had been forced to look inside it. The next morning, I wrote a check to the hospice for a new wing, one dedicated to respite care for caregivers. On the memo line, I wrote simply, "For those who stayed." When I dropped the envelope in the mailbox, I felt something lift, not triumph, freedom. And yet somewhere deep down, I knew the story still wasn't over. Because legacies don't end, they ripple, and one day, those ripples were going to reach me again. 2 years passed before the echoes finally quieted. The farmhouse, Grandma's farmhouse, no longer felt like a shrine. It was alive again. The walls hummed with new voices, laughter spilling down the hallways. Where the dining room once hosted tense family dinners, there were now caregivers sitting together over coffee, exhaling the kind of exhaustion I once carried alone. I'd followed through on Grandma's wish. Part of the estate funded the Dorothy Whitmore Respite Center, a home for people who needed a break from caring for their elderly loved ones. They came from all over the county. Sons, daughters, wives, husbands, some weeping, some numb, all grateful. I gave them warm meals, beds with quilts that still smelled faintly of lavender, and permission to rest. Every morning I walked through the garden with a mug of tea, the sun catching the dew on the roses. The air smelled like lemon oil and earth. Sometimes I thought I could hear Grandma humming through the wind chimes. Caleb sent a Christmas card that first year. Inside, a single line in his neat handwriting. I'm sorry. You deserve better siblings. A photo fell out. Him standing in front of a small nonprofit office called Home First Care. He was working there now, volunteering with families of Alzheimer's patients. The next year, another card came. Still learning. Still grateful. He'd lost everything material, but found something else. Humility, maybe even grace. I never answered the first one, but I replied to the second. Proud of you. Grandma would be too. Natasha didn't write. The last I heard, she'd moved across the country, taken an entry-level job at a community center, and deleted every trace of her old life online. I wanted to hate her, but instead I hoped she'd found quiet somewhere. Some mistakes deserve distance more than punishment. One golden afternoon in early May, I was in the rose garden when a knock came at the door. Standing on the porch was a young woman with long dark hair and nervous eyes. Hi, she said softly. I'm Bethany, Caleb's daughter. My heart stuttered. You've grown up, I said. Though the truth was, I'd last seen her when she was 6, clutching a doll and hiding behind Caleb's leg. She smiled shyly. Dad talks about you, and about great-grandma. I invited her in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where Grandma used to roll out pie dough. Bethany glanced around the room with quiet awe. It still smells like her, she whispered. She'd like that, I said. Bethany hesitated before pulling something from her bag, a folded pamphlet. I wanted to thank you. I got the scholarship, the Dorothy Whitmore Fund. My chest tightened. You're studying nursing? She nodded. Dad says caring for people is the only way to repay the past. He volunteers every weekend at the senior center. Reads to the residents. Sometimes just sits with them. She scrolled through her phone and turned it to me. Caleb in a simple cardigan, reading aloud to an old man who looked like he hadn't smiled in months. He said it's what great-grandma would have wanted, Bethany continued, and what you taught him, how love should look when it's real. I swallowed hard. He's right, I whispered. Bethany reached across the table and squeezed my hand. He's changed, Aunt Quinn. He talks about making amends one good deed at a time. He told me to tell you. Thank you for forgiving him, even when he didn't deserve it. I didn't trust my voice enough to answer. I just nodded. After she left, I walked out to the garden, the sky brushed with orange and violet. The roses were blooming in waves, the scent carrying memories I thought had finally settled. I followed the gravel path to the far corner where Grandma's grave rested beneath the old oak tree. The headstone was simple. Dorothy Mae Whitmore, 1928 to 2023. Love outlives the body. I knelt, brushing a few fallen petals off the stone. Your plan worked, I whispered. You didn't just leave money, you left medicine. You made us face ourselves. A breeze swept through the branches above, soft and deliberate. For a moment, the air filled with that faint, unmistakable trace of lavender. I closed my eyes. Thank you, I said. I stayed there until the last light faded, until the crickets began their nightly choir. Then I walked back to the farmhouse, our farmhouse now, its windows glowing warm against the dark. That night, I sat by the fire with Grandma's floral notebook. I'd read it so many times I could almost recite her words, but one page near the end had always caught me. Her handwriting trembled there, weaker than the others. March 25th. I meet with the lawyer tomorrow. Quinn will be shocked by what I'm leaving her, but she shouldn't be. Love like hers deserves to be rewarded. The others will get exactly what they've given me. Someday, I hope they understand why. I closed the book gently. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like a sigh. Somewhere in that sound was forgiveness, the kind that doesn't need to be spoken aloud. I realized then that Grandma's final gift wasn't the house, or the money, or even the justice. It was the understanding that love is an inheritance you spend by giving it away. Some inheritances are measured in dollars, others in the kind of person you become. I turned off the lamp and let the darkness settle, warm and complete, around everything she'd built and everything she'd left behind.